Thank you so much for tuning in. I have a wonderful guest tonight from Utah. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is A Gift from Adversity. And it's written by me, Juri, and it's available on Amazon. The subtitle of A Gift from Adversity is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. I experienced all of these adversities growing up in Japan, and this book is about how I endured all my adversities and the tools that I used to overcome, and also a nonprofit that I started and ran for 12 years, and it's available again on Amazon, A Gift from Adversity. After I published my book, I got a lot of fans and people who bought my book reached out to me and told me that they are also a victim of sexual abuse or domestic violence or homelessness. I felt compelled to talk more about this topic, and this year I started a Gift from Adversity podcast. And I'm very, very humbled and grateful for all the guests who came to the show and openly, bravely discussed about the adversities, but not only that, tools that they use to overcome, and also a gift that came from it. So let's invite tonight's guest. Hi, Karin. Thank you so much for coming to A Gift from Adversity today.
Hi, Juri. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Thank you. So can you tell our audience who you are, where you're located, and what you do, and if you have a website and also social medias?
Yeah. So I'm Karin Nelson. I live in northern Utah, right kind of on the mountain bench. It's beautiful, but very, very hot right now. And I am a divorce confidence coach. So basically, I coach women who are going through a divorce and teach them how to love themselves again and how to create kind of the life that they always wanted when they were married, but they didn't quite achieve. And so I teach them how to do that in their lives. I have two amazing kids. They're actually so grown up now. I can't even barely call them kids because my daughter is 20 and my son is 17. And yeah, I just love what I do. And my website is my name, KarinNelsonCoaching.com. So it's easy to remember. And I also have a podcast of my own called Becoming You Again that is specific for divorced women to give them tools and techniques to help them as they transition out of marriage into divorced life.
So the website again is KarinNelsonCoaching.com.
Yes.
So people can reach out to Karin if they are looking for some guidance.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And let's dive into our first question, which is the adversity. So, can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yeah. So I got married when I was 19 years old, which I grew up in Utah and it's a very religious community. The whole state basically is a religious community. And so it's not unusual for people in Utah, women especially, to get married very young. And so I got married when I was 19. My husband at the time was 22, and we were married for 20 years. And at 20 years, we decided to get divorced. And it was a huge decision for me because that relationship was basically the longest and the longest relationship I'd ever had and the most intense relationship I'd ever had, and I knew nothing different. I went from living in my parents' home to living in my marriage home. And so being an almost 40-year-old getting divorced, having really not experienced anything else, it was a very scary transition for me. And I didn't really know how I was going to make it work, if I was going to make it work, and what was going to come after the end of my marriage.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go back to how young you were that you got married at 19. How was it? How was it like being married so young? And then having that as your identity?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I grew up in this religious community in the LDS church. And one of the things that they kind of really instill in the girls, the women of the church, is that it's very important to become a mother and to stay at home and raise your kids, which I think is a beautiful thing. I don't think there's anything bad or wrong with that message in and of itself. However, I took it to mean that I needed to support my husband and do whatever was in my power to make him happy. And if he was happy, then I would also be happy, which basically meant as we were married, I would defer many decisions to him. I would, he got to go after his goals and dreams of having the job that he always wanted. And I didn't really feel like it was something that I could do. I didn't even necessarily have desires to go after a specific job or career or do something outside of the home, because in my head I had this idea of, this is my space, this is where I'm needed and wanted, is to be the mother of these kids and to support my husband in all of his endeavors, which again, it's great, but it did become a detriment to me because I kind of forgot my own desires, my own wants, and my own needs. And I put those on the back burner. And anytime a thought came into my head of like, oh, maybe you should pursue this, or maybe you should do this, and I would just kind of shush it and push it away like it wasn't important, which basically I started telling myself that I wasn't important enough to want to go after these things. And so, you know, living this kind of life where I'm trying to please everyone around me except for myself, and putting myself on the back burner over and over and over again, really takes a toll on your self-esteem. At least it did for me. And I ended up really not happy, not loving myself, and telling myself that if I had an opinion or I had a desire, that it was wrong and I needed to shut it down. And that doesn't do much for, an individual. And it also was a struggle for me because with this idea that if my husband was happy and there was a way that I could make him happy, and then he's coming home from work and he's also not happy, I'm taking that on as my responsibility and thinking that it's my fault. When in reality, I can't make him happy and he can't make me happy. That's all, something that we have to learn on our own and take on our own. And so it was a big struggle for me to see him not happy, and then me trying to compensate for that and not being able to. So again, it was just piling more shame and really a hit to my self-esteem of thinking I'm not good enough to be able to take care of his emotional needs. I can't even take care of mine emotional needs. You know, where am I going to go from here? So it was many years of detriment to my mental and emotional self-esteem.
At what point do you think you start to realize that?
Oh, it was all throughout. There was a lot of moments where I would notice how sad I was, and I understand that there are a lot of people probably who listen to your podcast who have anxiety and depression, and it was different than that. It was more like I wasn't allowing myself to be authentic with who I was. And I could feel that inside, but I didn't necessarily understand what it was. And so there were moments throughout, but the real awareness came when we were deciding whether we were going to get divorced or not. And I had a moment of clarity where I asked myself, what do you want, Karin? And I just I told myself, please just say what you really want. It was like I was almost begging myself to give me permission to do it, to answer it truthfully. And I did. And I just told myself I want a divorce. And it was like this immediate rush of peace came over me. And I knew that was like maybe the first time in years, maybe 20, I don't really know, but it was the first time in years that I had actually been honest with what I truly wanted in my life. And I was willing to ask the question, I was willing to be honest, and I was willing to take the next step. So I think that was the first time where I realized I haven't been honest with myself for a really long time. Now's my opportunity. And it was everything after that where I realized, oh no, I really don't know who I am. I really don't like this person that I am. I'm not happy and I haven't been happy for a very long time. And it was almost like this big conglomeration of all of these realizations all at once, with that first step of allowing myself to open up and be honest with what I truly wanted in life.
So when you disclosed the information with your husband, ex-husband, how was his reaction?
We had kind of been back and forth with, should we get divorced or shouldn't we? And neither of us really would take the plunge, really would answer the question honestly. And so when I got that answer and I felt that peace, I went to him and I just said, I want a divorce. And I really think this is the best decision for me. And I know it's going to be a struggle for you. I know it's going to be a struggle for me. And I also know it's going to be a struggle for our children. I mean, I wasn't trying to pretend like it wasn't going to be hard. But I did say to him, I really feel like there's a way that we can have a divorce that doesn't look like everyone else's. I don't know how we'll do that. I don't know what that will look like even, but I don't want our divorce to be like everyone else's that you see in the media and on TV, and how everyone is there's so much animosity and hate. And he was open to it, and I think he was sad, but I think he also had the same realization that I had, that this was the best step forward. So for us, it was the right decision. And I just happened to be the one in the relationship who was willing to take that step and move forward with some honesty between the two of us.
Well, thank you so much. And I myself got married twice and then divorced twice. And what people don't realize is divorce is such a big life decision, well,
Mm,
same as getting married, but more so, I would say divorce is a lot more involved, not
yeah.
just emotionally, but legally and time, energy, and then you know, different situations, obviously. So I know a lot of people get divorced. I would say I've heard like 60% divorce rate in America, sadly. But I realized that when I was talking to people, when I was getting first divorced, a lot of people that I had no idea that they were also divorced. I had no idea. I found more and more about people starting to tell me their stories.
Yeah.
So did you feel when you decided to divorce a tremendous amount of maybe pressure, depression, anxiety, and maybe social pressure, family pressure, all that stuff?
Yeah, especially in Utah with this religious background. I had left the church years ago, 15, 16 years ago, but my whole family is still a part of this church. And not that people in the church don't get divorced. It does happen. It's just not very common, and it is definitely looked down upon. And whether it's overt or not, it could be, the people are doing it subconsciously, but I did definitely feel that pressure of judgment from the community that I live in, the neighborhood that I live in, from not so much my family. My family was actually very supportive, thankfully. Of course, they were sad. I mean, we had been together for 20 years. Of course, there was that sadness and, disappointment of the end of our relationship, our marriage, but they were supportive. But in my own head, I had this story of being kind of the black sheep of my family that I had told myself, because I was the only person in my family. I am the only person in my family who has kind of stepped away from the religion. And then I'm the only person in my family who has gotten a divorce. And so I definitely have this stigma in my head anyway, of this story that I was telling myself, that I'm not living up to the expectations of my parents. I'm not living up to the expectations of my family. I'm not even living up to the expectations of this community and the society that I live in this state. And so there was some shame there for sure. There was, but and there was some judgment, but I feel like the judgment was coming more from myself rather than it was coming from the people outside of me. Now, of course, for sure, they probably were judging me and they just weren't saying it outright to me, but I was judging me more and thinking, second guessing myself. Is this the right decision? Maybe it's wrong. Maybe I didn't feel peaceful. Maybe I made that up, questioning, is this the right thing for me? And then of course, when we told our kids also, there was some of that, because it's hard on kids when separate this marriage and it's what they've always known, and then they have to start living in two different homes and going back and forth and spending only some time with mom and some time with dad. And so of course there was that guilt as well, and that shame that I felt of, maybe this was the wrong decision, maybe I shouldn't have chosen this, maybe I shouldn't have decided to move forward in this way. Obviously looking back, I've changed my tune and I know it was the right decision, but for sure in those moments there was that shame and that guilt that came from myself and the pressure of the society that I live in.
Well, Karin, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, it is a lot of stigma around the perfect marriage and being a woman, devotion to a husband, and more so in Japan. Like, we have this big social pressure that women are not worthy if they are not married, and then they are leftover birthday cake or no leftover Christmas cake if you're not married after 25. Or like when I was growing up, I heard that kind of phrases and stuff. So Korea never came first for women, and like say my aunt wasn't allowed to go to high school even, and then she was forced to go to cooking class or kimono making class. And like I don't know what kind of education my grandmother had, but I remember her like sweeping the floor every day and then serving men. And then just I've seen that not in America in Japan also only, but a lot of Middle Eastern countries and African countries. Some of the Indian friends that I met, like similar culture. And in America, I would say a lot more liberal, but in your situation, sounded like it was more conservative and more of you can't do this, and you're not worthy if you're not on these certain expectations type of stuff.
Yeah. And it never was like an outright thing where, you're being taught in your Sunday school class, you can't have a job or you can't go to school. They're never saying that outright, but because so much emphasis is put on the family and the hierarchical place of the family, like we have the patriarch who's the husband and he's kind of the leader of the family, and then you have the matriarch, which is the mother, and the mother of course is in charge of the children because that's where her place is to be in the home. And so no one ever told me don't go get a job, don't go to school. And I actually did get my degree, but I got my degree in history with the plan of never using it. I knew in my head, like I would tell people this, oh, I'm going to school to get my degree in history, but I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to be home with the kids. Like I knew that was the plan the whole time. It wasn't like something that was a secret to me or to anyone around me, And so there wasn't an outright saying if you can't do this, you can't do that, but it is an underlying theme in this, in this cultural society of the woman's place is in the home, being a mother should be enough for you. And again, I don't want to say that it's not, because for some women it is enough, but for me it wasn't. And I did want more. I just didn't realize that until much later, that I did want more than just the title of mother. I think being a mother is amazing. I love my kids more than anything, but I also know that I have wants and desires, and I want to hit goals and, add value to the world in a different way. And I didn't realize that until I went through my divorce and recognized that I also had a choice and I could choose something else for myself.
And 19 is a very young age. I remember like one of my friend in Japan before I came to America that she got married at young, like you. And I remember vividly the conversation that we had because I was coming to America to study abroad, where she was already raising her first child.
Mm.
And I remember like her not like mean way, but kind of criticizing me, like, what is your priority? And like, my priority is my husband and my child. And then I was like everywhere. And then obviously I came to America. So like, I never really was able to answer that question. And to me, like, I had my first son when I was 34, and then my daughter at 40. And by then, I've done probably one of the coolest things that I've never dreamed of doing, like touring all over the America with superstars. Um, Started a nonprofit, like went to the best music college in the world, and really competed with these world-class musicians. Really pushed my limit as a musician. And then those are the experiences that I got to do without having to worry about my children. And when I
Yeah.
did become a mom, I was kind of satisfied with what I've accomplished or what I did, spread the wing, I would say. And I think 19 is really young
Yeah.
to have that responsibility and not fully be able to discover your life. And I'm not criticizing the young marriage, and I
Yeah.
think it's a beauty to it because when you are at your age, your kids are grown. Now you have more time, I guess. Now
Yeah, exactly.
you don't have to really worry about them now. You can
Yeah.
do. So, there's definitely pros and cons, but I really appreciate your struggle and then sharing your true emotion and then realization.
Yeah.
Let's actually switch to my second question, which is the tools that
Mhm.
you use to overcome these challenges and adversity. So, this is my favorite part of the podcast where when I started this podcast, I kind of had no idea where it would take us. But more and more I do the interview, every guest who had been to our show um, from all over the world, they definitely brought so many great techniques and unique tools that they use to overcome, rather than just people who had no idea what it's like to struggle. And then they said, "Oh, just go get therapist," where the therapist has like 2 3 years wait list and stuff. So, what do
Yeah.
you think the tools that you use that worked the best for you?
Yeah. So the very first thing that I remember implementing for me was after I asked for the divorce and we were in the separation process, I realized that I really didn't like myself. There I just couldn't think of anything about me that I liked. I would look in the mirror and the only thing that would come into my head was criticism and hateful words. And I just had this mean girl that was nonstop telling me what a terrible human being I was, you know? And I remember being in my bathroom one morning, and I have read self help books throughout the years. And so I had a basis of understanding what self help was and that it could influence my life in a nice way if I would open up to it. And I remember just thinking, if you want to change how you feel about yourself, you need to start being kind. You need to start saying nice things. And even if it's just for a few moments a day. And so I promised myself that morning that I was going to tell myself 5 things that I liked about me. And the only rule was that I had to believe them, they had to be true things. And so I just said them out loud. And I was like, okay, I like my curly hair. I think I have a nice smile. I'm a good mom. I think I had 2 more. I can't remember off the top of my head because this was years ago, but I had 2 more things that I liked about myself and that I believed. And so throughout the day, I just kind of, when that mean girl would come up, I'd kind of go back to those. Okay, but I like my curly hair. I have really pretty curly hair, and I really have a nice smile, and I'm a good mom, and I'm a good worker, or whatever the other 2 were. And I promised myself that I would do that every day. So I did it. The next day, I did it, and I said the same 5 things because I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't come up with like 2 more different things or 5 different things that I liked about myself. But I knew those 5 things I definitely believed. And I just started doing that. And so about 3 weeks in is about when I recognized a few more things. And so I kind of would switch them out and say, okay, here's a couple more things that I can add to this list of things that I like about myself. And, I did this for months as we were going through our separation and divorce. And the list started to get longer, and it started to get much easier for me to recognize things that I liked about myself, things that I really appreciated about me when I would kind of show up for myself and trust myself, or, allow my opinion to be heard. And I started to just recognize more and more and more. And the more I recognized and the more I kind of shouted those out to myself, even though I wasn't, yelling them or screaming them, but I was telling them to myself. And it started to replace some of this mean, hateful voice that was going on in my head. And it started to make me feel a little bit better about myself. And I started to feel a little more confident in my capabilities and how I was showing up in the world. And I started to take more chances, more risks. I started to kind of step out of my comfort zone and, you know, made some friends and started going out on nights when before I would just stay home because I didn't know what I enjoyed doing. I didn't have friends outside of the home really. I was mostly just with my kids, and I started doing things that I hadn't really ever allowed myself to do because I was feeling more confident, because I was enjoying the person that I was with when before I really didn't enjoy being with me. And so that was the very first step for me, was just telling myself those 5 things and just continuing with that process over and over and over.
So self-affirmation, and
Yeah.
usually I've heard it takes at least 21 days for subconscious to digest,
Yeah.
and the paradigm shift. The self-image and the self-sabotage that I experienced because of the verbal, physical, sexual abuse from my father growing up. And it was the image that was created. And however you do this self-affirmation, I've heard that it's not going to work if you stop, if you don't do consecutive 21 days at least for brain to even recognize or
Yeah.
subconscious to erase or rewrite your self-image. And I am happy that you recognize the main voice that was coming to you, and then be able to shut it off and starting to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know why we do that as a human being, but a lot of people do self beating, self doubting. And why do you think we do that? And why do you think it takes time for us to rewrite our image of our own bad image?
Yeah. Well, I think just naturally as humans, I think it's kind of inherent because our brain is kind of primed to scan for negativity because many years ago, ancestors and ancestors ago, anything that was danger was, life or death. And so we were constantly scanning for negative things to look for to protect ourselves. And so as we've evolved, our brain hasn't evolved out of that protective state. And so it's primed to think negatively because we think it's a protective measure for ourselves. We think if we put ourselves down, maybe that will motivate us to change. Or if we put ourselves down, maybe that will somehow protect us in some way, even though it makes no sense and it doesn't really. It actually just creates more hurt, more pain, more negativity for ourselves. And so I think that is why, but I think it's so amazing that our brains have the capability and the capacity to change and to create new neural pathways where we can replace those mean, hateful thoughts that we have that we've been thinking for so long. And with that repetition and with that time and with that continued, diligence of being kind, your brain naturally will replace those. I don't think we can necessarily get rid of it all ever. I think we'll always have a little bit of that mean girl, and you just have to kind of be aware. Okay, that's my brain doing what my brain does and telling me, these mean thoughts. And I think it's a matter of being willing to say, I don't want to go down that road anymore, or I'm just going to kind of like a ticker tape, almost like what you have on this video going across the bottom. You kind of can just watch the mean girl thoughts go across in your head, and you can either follow them and continue with them and continue to create more mean girl thoughts, or after you've been able to replace some of them, you can kind of just watch it go by and go, yep, that's what my brain does. Now what do I want to think about myself? At least that's what I've been working on doing anyway.
And how did the coaching business came out to help other women through the divorce? And then do you think that is helping you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So because I was able to create this confidence and this self-love, and I continued to build on that, I kept asking myself, now that I'm in this new space, after I've, been divorced, what do I want to do? Like my world is wide open now. What do I want to do with my life? And I love helping people. I think for women that is very innate in us, is to just, we are givers and nurturers and we want to help. And I enjoy helping people. And because I went through my divorce and I understand the emotions that go along with it, and I understand, you know, the ins and outs of, like you say, the legal stuff and the separation and the handling the kids and all of the things that go along with a divorce. I was introduced to life coaching and I thought, why not? Why not be a life coach for women who are going through a divorce? And so I became certified and then just started my practice about 3 years ago and haven't looked back since. And as far as it helping me, 100%. It, first of all, being an entrepreneur is no easy task. It is a lot of hard work and diligence and really a lot of mind management because it's hard. There's nobody out there telling you the steps exactly to take for your business. And there's a lot of criticism and there's a lot of things that go into it that are difficult, and you have to be willing to work through those things. So, of course, I am getting stronger each day as I continue to grow my business, but being able to work with women who are going through divorce and really teach them how to love themselves again and teach them how to feel confident in who they are and teach them that their divorce does not have to define their life in a terrible negative way. It does not have to mean that their life is ruined, and that there is so much more outside of the divorce that they can create for themselves, and being able to help them figure out what that is that they want and to go after that and create the confidence and the love and the emotional stability to be able to do it is so amazing. It brings me so much joy. So I feel like so often I get so much more out of my coaching sessions than my clients do, but this job is my dream, and I'm so happy that I'm in the space where I am today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I really think what you said was right. Divorce doesn't identify you, and there is a lot more after that. And then again, it doesn't have to be nasty, and then it can be amicable, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to ruin you. And then it's almost like identity crisis that you have to go through, like when you
Yeah.
get divorced. And when I disclosed, when I closed my nonprofit organization, I had this like huge identity crisis because I was a president and founder of the nonprofit that I would say to everybody, and I was running that, and it was almost like losing somebody important in my life, and it never like forget about that. And then again, you know, getting the business and helping other people of what you had experienced, and then for them to get through that difficult, like, you know, part of their lives that makes it much faster and easier, and then less of the pain. I
Yeah.
think what you're doing with your experience, what you went through, I'm sure your clients appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that I do love working with my clients, and I see their growth and the change that comes over them as we continue through our coaching sessions and as we go through the weeks and weeks that we work together. But it is such a joy of my life to be able to show up in that way. And whether or not I continue doing this for the rest of my life, I have no idea. But I know right now this is the exact space that I am supposed to be in, because it brings me so much joy to, you know, watch myself grow and change, but also to watch the growth and change that is happening to women who work with me or women who listen to my podcast, or any of the ways that they are, exposed to the things that I'm putting out in the world because of the things that I have gone through and the things that I've been able to learn because of this adversity that I've come across. It's an amazing thing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So my last question is a gift that came from the adversity. So what would you say a gift that came from your adversity?
Yeah, I would say the biggest gift that I have been given is this feeling and recognition of how important kindness to ourselves is. I don't think that I ever realized that that was something that we needed as human beings to do. And I think kindness is different than love, kindness is different than self esteem and confidence and all of those different things, because we all know how to be kind to other people. And sometimes when we are trying to build a relationship with ourselves, it's feeling self-love or feeling love for ourselves or feeling confident feels very far away. It feels very foreign and hard to create. But we all understand what it means to be kind to someone. And I don't think that I realized the impact that that would make on my life and how it completely transformed the direction that I've gone in. And I see it with my clients as well. When I teach them like exquisite kindness to themselves, it's like their eyes are opened for the first time of like, I am worthy to be kind to me. I am worthy to show compassion to myself and to love me in a way that maybe I haven't ever been able to do before. And I think it's much easier when you teach someone, show yourself some kindness today. How can you do that today? That has been such a gift for me because when I can remember, like if I'm having a hard day or, that mean girl pops back in because, we're never going to get fully rid of it. When I can just remind myself, can you show up with some kindness for yourself today? How can you do that today? My whole day will change. My whole outlook will change. And so that I think is the biggest gift of just recognizing how important that kindness for ourselves is. And then being able to share that with the world and teach other women like you're worthy of being kind to you. You're valuable. How can you show up with kindness today for you?
That is a very important lesson and a gift. And then I'm sorry that you went through the hardship, but I'm very happy that at the end of the day that you discover something that no one can take it away from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to share one thing that I've been modeling since I was 17 in Tokyo. And I've done like fashion magazine, fashion shows, like, you know, movies and everything. But then when people say like, "Oh, you look stunning," or "You look beautiful," like inside of me, like never really accepted because I wasn't kind enough, or I wasn't like really um meeting my worth um because of my abuse from the
Yeah.
child and then brainwash that I was exposed to early on. And admitting that and moving forward and being kind to myself, it's okay, just that is a huge discovery. And a
Yeah.
lot of us don't realize the power of it and don't realize that so many people, men and women, like any genders, like we just suffer. And you you're right about maybe scanning like from the ancient time of the dangers and stuff, but at the same time, if you can realize that early on in your life,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people would live more happier and with less of pressure.
Yeah,
um so do you feel really good about yourself right now?
I do. I love myself more now than I ever remember from any time in my past. And I have more compassion for myself now when I make mistakes and when I don't show up as like the person that I know I can be or that I kind of want to aspire to be. But I don't beat myself up in those moments like I used to because I recognize that that kindness will go so much farther for me and will help me move into those moments of being the person that I want to be and move into those moments of like recognizing, okay, I made that mistake. How can I show up differently next time? And so, yes, absolutely. I am happier and more content with this person that I am now than I've ever been in my whole life. And it feels amazing. And I love me. And for more people to be able to find that and to recognize that man, the world would be just an amazing place. The more people who can step into that knowledge for themselves as well.
I think a lot of arguments and fight and then war and all that stuff would somehow decrease if they
Mm,
start to be kind to themselves
yeah.
and being able to recognize that there's no need to attack somebody with your insecurity, because like truthfully nothing can replace your self-love. Like people just think being loved by somebody else can help you, but even in a perfect marriage, even somebody is so loving and you have a ton of money and fans, if you are not kind and if you don't self-love, everything would look very different, and then you just sabotage everything because you can't accept
Yeah.
it. You don't realize it.
Yeah.
Even
You're
if you
so
have
right.
even if you have a little thing. I'm a single mom of two. I don't have much, but I look at it, I'm starting to learn about self-love and self-care and then kindness to myself, like you said. And a part of it is really realizing that the void and the violation and adversity that we endure in our lives, we tend to like seek for an attention from other people, but don't realize that won't matter if you are not kind to yourself or if you're not accepting yourself as who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we have, I like to explain it like we have this void inside of us that when we go to outside sources like, your husband or your boyfriend or your kids or friends or your job or whatever, to try and fill that void up with validation and you're good enough and you're doing it and you've got this, but you haven't been able to create that for yourself and you haven't been able to step into that belief about it for you. You could get as many validating, words coming at you. And like you say, if you don't have that belief in your worth, and if you aren't being kind to yourself and being open to accepting that from yourself, you'll never be able to accept it from other people. You'll always find fault in it. You'll always continually come up with, yeah, but there's this part of me that's not good enough, or there's that part of me that did this thing wrong. And so it really does have to come from the inside and be built this foundation of kindness and love and acceptance of who you are.
Well, Karen, I really appreciate this conversation and then deep diving into your adversity, but the tools and then the gift that came from it. And I really appreciate your honesty and then being brave and being vulnerable and true to your story and yourself. And I really wish you continue to love yourself and then help other people and then help other people realize that, you know, they have a lot more to give to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Juri. It has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you being so open and willing to have me come on and tell my story and ask all these questions and really dig into, the parts of me that make me who I am today. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you for being part of a gift from adversity. And thank you again to everyone for listening. And Karen, again, I appreciate you and looking forward to connecting with you more. And for our audience, we have more guests coming in, and I hope this podcast is helping somebody out there and help discover themselves and self love and have a better life and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.